Good morning, Mary. Good morning, Ollie. Morning, listeners.
Now, Eamonn, what is the hot topic today from Waterford Treasures with your virtual tour?
Well, the hot topic today is a painting by a man called Samuel Fredrick Brocas. And if you can imagine, if you could go back 200 years and stand at the end of Colbeck Street there, or the beginning of Catherine Street, and look down towards the river, he painted that scene at that exact point 200 years ago. And it's a beautiful view of the Mall, of course, the most elegant street in the city at the time. The Mall was a relatively new area outside the town wall, so all the buildings there are relatively new 200 years ago. And the first building you see on the Bishop's Palace side is a little kind of a workshop or something, but there's obviously, you can see from a notice inside that they're selling lottery tickets there, so things haven't changed.
Go away. That's
gas.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love those little snapshots of history.
Yeah, it is indeed. And you can see then the spire of Christchurch Cathedral and then the Bishop's Palace, and there's a big wall in front of it. Now, I'm old enough to remember that wall when I was going to school, and of course the Bishop was a Church of Ireland bishop who lived there. He had a family, so the wall really was protecting his privacy. So this was a private garden. What's now open was a private garden. And in that garden you can see a very elegant glasshouse, and that was a heated glasshouse. And they used to grow exotic fruits like pineapple. People actually, it's unusual things that they did. And to impress your guests, in fact, people, even wealthy people in the 18th century would hire pineapples and bring them back to the shop then if you didn't use them. They were so expensive. Great story about that is that the gardener and his wife looked after that garden, and the garden you can see a wall on the other side of the Mall where Waterford Crystal is today, and there was a big wall there because that was the actual palace garden, the vegetable garden, you say, of the Bishop's Palace. The other was the formal garden. And the gardener who looked after all these and his wife lived in houses there in Colbeck Street. That was all part of the complex. He had a visit from his brother who was a bit down and out, and the brother was very jealous of him. And next thing we know, the gardener and his wife were dead.
What?
And
wasn't expecting that, Eamonn.
Yeah, they weren't feeling well for a while, and then a man called Mackesy, living at the top of Dr. Mackesy, living at the first house there on Lady Lane, just opposite the Bishop's Palace, a big house there just near the Franciscan Friary. It's still there. He thought it was a bit suspicious that the two of them should die together and around the same time, and he started going around the apothecaries, which are basically the chemist shops of Waterford, and he found that the brother was telling the different apothecaries or chemists that there was houses filled with rats and he needed to kill them. And obviously what he was doing was he was feeding them rat poison.
Oh my God.
So, and anyhow, he was tried and found guilty, and up at what's now Ballybricken, the Garda station there, the connection of Mayor's Walk and Ballybricken, they decided that he was condemned to death and he was to be hung, but they didn't have a gallows. It had been years and years since anybody was executed in Waterford.
Roughly, Eamonn, what year would this have been now, just to put this in perspective?
Around 1820.
Okay.
Right.
So it's a few years after the painting. The painting's about 1812. Yeah. They had to kind of make up a gallows from the weighing scales, big bars across the big weighing scales for weighing vegetables, I suppose potatoes out from Ballybricken. The thing all went wrong. The poor man had to be executed.
Oh my God.
That's very gruesome.
But anyway, he was hung, and imagine over 10,000 people came to watch him being hung. So this was literally a blood sport.
Over 10,000 people
to watch a public hanging. That is barbaric.
It's
it's
really popular. Yeah, sure. Suppose you didn't have television, and he was buried anyway.
Jamie.
RWLR. It sounds like a cross between an Agatha Christie novel or a Wild West film.
What's the big one that what's his name was in? Russell Crowe.
Gladiator.
Yeah.
Gladiators. Yeah. And then he was buried up in St. Patrick's, up Thomas's Hill, which there was a graveyard there. It's now lost. It's now gone, and there's a car park there now. But that's where he was buried. But just very quickly, then immediately across the road where the House of Waterford Crystal is, and really more up where the Maryland is and Savoy Restaurant, there's carriages in the painting. They're very beautiful carriages. Remember, people didn't have cars, so there are carriages there. And they're making the carriages there. We know from ordnance survey maps that this was a carriage-making place. And the carriage they seem to be making seems to be, or they're repairing. There's two men fixing a wheel or making a wheel. We don't know which, obviously. And we think it's the mayor's carriage because they have George Rex, King of England, of course, and this would only be on the mayor's carriage. So it's a wonderful thing. And the interesting thing that Donnacha Calcon told me this morning, our colleague here in the museum, that I was on the phone to him, and he's telling me that that's the place where the first bicycle was made in Waterford in 1815.
Brilliant stuff.
You had to kind of pedal the wheel. There was no chains on it.
Okay.
So it's another little part of our history.
That's amazing. What a story.
Well, yeah, great story. Eamonn, I'm afraid we're smack out of time. We have to leave it there. But listen, thank you very much.
Cheers,
Eamonn.